We all know top tier edge rushers like Aiden Hutchinson, TJ Watt, and Micah Parsons, but who are some defensive linemen in the middle rounds that can really make a difference for your IDP teams in fantasy football? Hey everyone, I'm Axton Harding, and in just a second, we're going to get into tiers 4 through 6 of my defensive lineman rankings. Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the IDP Plus podcast. As I said before, my name is Axton Harding. I'm your host on this show. You can find me on Twitter at AxmanIDP. We're looking to finish up the defensive lineman rankings for this little short series of videos. Last week, I put out my top couple of tiers. We went over a bunch of the top tier edge rushers, guys that you can set and forget. But now we're talking about the next few tiers, tiers 4 through 6. We're going to get deep into defensive linemen 2s and 3s for your team. So we're going to have plenty of options for you guys to kind of take a look at and see how I stack these guys up against one another. So without further ado, we can go ahead and jump into it. We finished off last episode with tier 3, so we'll start this episode with tier 4 and we'll work down to DL 36 here. So to start off here for DL tier 4, we'll start off with Harold Landry up here at the top at defensive end 14 for the New England Patriots. He was previously with Tennessee, went to New England this offseason. Then we've got Trayvon Walker at defensive end 15 for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Andrew Van Ginkel comes in at defensive end 16 for Minnesota. Nick Bonito, defensive end 17 for Denver. Dexter Lawrence comes in at defensive tackle 1, the New York Giants interior defensive lineman. We also have another Giants defensive lineman here in Abdul Carter, the rookie from the Giants drafted here just about a month ago. Comes in at defensive end 18. Byron Young, defensive end 19, edge rusher for the LA Rams. And then Liatu Latu rounds out tier 4 for me as defensive end 20 for the Indianapolis Colts. So we'll jump into a little bit about Landry to start off this tier. Comes in at 28 years old. Played for the Tennessee Titans last year and has throughout his entire career. This will be his first season with a new team. Last season, he played 17 games, recorded 4 pass deflections, 9 sacks, 71 combined tackles, 42 of which were solo, 15 for a loss, 15 quarterback hits, and even a safety last year. Harold Landry, as defensive end 14 for me, is the pillar of consistency for this tier and position overall. He's nothing overly flashy. He won't get you 2 strip sacks, a bunch of fumble recoveries, forced fumbles, etc., but he pretty much tackles and sacks it's kind of just his bread and butter here. It's something that we can kind of rely on for him. So that's kind of the bulk of his production is just sacks and tackles. He might get a pass deflection here and there, but mainly he's just always on the field. He's always available. He missed one season a couple of years ago, but otherwise he hasn't missed a game since 2018 when he entered the league. Not to mention his floor is actually rock solid. You take a look at his stats year over year and you'll see he's got about a 60, 65 or better tackle floor. That's very reliable, especially in this range of defensive linemen here. So, then he's also got a floor of about 9 to 12 sacks. So we've just got an overall very stable floor for Harold Landry over the course of an entire season. Again, and like I said, he's not somebody that's just going to come out and break the game for you and just completely win you your week, but he's a guy you can put in your lineups and just kind of forget about him. So again, you can just really count on him to get a handful of tackles and a sack more often than he won't. Now he finds himself with New England as they look to be a respectable squad this year for the first time since Tom Brady. Historically, the New England Patriots have rotated under Bill Belichick for much of the last 20 years, so we haven't got a whole lot of consistency from new coaching regimes. They've had a lot of turnover in that respect. A lot's changed since Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, but Harold Landry is the kind of player that you really don't want to keep off the field. He's not the kind of guy you want to be rotating in because he's just too effective on the field, and it shows in his numbers. So I think that the Patriots are going to find a way to get him 70% or more snaps this season and keep him as one of these more higher-end defensive linemen. Again, pillar of consistency. This guy gets it done year over year. That's why Harold Landry's topping this tier for me. Then we get down to a little Trayvon Walker talk. The former first overall pick is the edge rusher for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He comes in at my defensive end 15. He's 24 this year. He played, if we kind of look at some of his stats from last year, he played 17 games, recorded a pass deflection, 2 forced fumbles, a fumble recovery on one of those. Also managed to return one of those for 35 yards. So if you get points for fumble recovery yards, there's some extra points there. Again, just one fumble recovery, not really something we can stamp on year over year. But he also got 10.5 sacks, 61 tackles, 31 of which were solo, 13 for a loss, and 15 quarterback hits. So again, the former first overall pick kind of had a shaky start to his career as a rookie, where he only recorded 3.5 sacks and 10 tackles on a very limited role. But he quickly turned it around in year 2 with a 10-sack season, and then he follows that up in his third year with another double-digit sack, 10.5 sacks last year, and then he raises his floor even more in year 3. He also added strip sacks to his game in the last year, and just consistently continues to steadily bring his floor up, especially with that 60 tackle mark that he achieved last year in his 2024 season. That's something that we can really rely on for a stable floor in our defensive linemen. That's what we talked about a lot last week. So we like to see that, especially in a first overall pick who started out kind of shaky. A lot of people were kind of dropping him down the ranks. He just wasn't performing in year 1. But again, we've got to remind ourselves that, defensive linemen take some time to develop more often than not. There's very few times that they will just pop in year 1. I'll always say that. You will not find numbers that will back more even first round defensive linemen popping in year 1 over the guys that just take a little time to develop, which is, again, more often than not. So Walker, he's not often thought of as a huge impact player anymore after his first season kind of started out to a rocky start. So the community's kind of down on him. I think he's a guy with more to his game, and he's showing with his overall production year over year steadily increasing that he is on the path to live up to the expectations. It just might take a little time for him to really massage into that kind of production. But like I said, there's more to this kid. They've got a new coach, new life under this defense. Last season, they kind of just quit on their coach. Doug Peterson wasn't getting it done. The team was just kind of falling apart, injuries, you name it. So I'd say we're looking at his floor here in terms of his production from last season, in terms of tackles, and then I think we can also expect to see more double-digit sack seasons from this guy, considering the guy had potential to go 101 overall a few years ago. So Trayvon Walker, I think you should pencil him in as a guy who could continue to climb the ranks. So keep an eye on this guy this season. I think the Jaguars are going to surprise a lot of people. So now we'll get into a little bit of the Ginkster. Andrew Van Ginkel has come on strong in the last couple of years, albeit late in his career. He is 29, edge rusher for the Minnesota Vikings. He comes in at my defensive end 16. Last year he played 17 games, recorded 2 interceptions that he took to the house for a touchdown, 73 interception return yards, and 6 pass deflections in that time. He's also recorded 11.5 sacks last season with 79 combined tackles, 50 of which were solo, 18 for a loss, and 19 quarterback hits. Andrew Van Ginkel has been absolutely getting it done in all aspects of IDP the last couple of years, which is kind of why we have him ranked where he's at, because he's proven that he can get it done, but also at the same time, with the level of production he's put up the last couple of years, we've got to expect some sort of regression. Guys don't often put up these kind of numbers year over year unless they're these top tier edge rushers, and late in his career, I have a high suspicion that AVG is not going to quite live up to the Myles Garretts of the world. So again, we just kind of want to temper expectations, but nonetheless, he's proven to have a solid floor the last couple of years. So I likely have him probably higher than consensus from the drafts that I've been in. It seems like he's going quite a bit later than I like to pick him up, but he's a special dude. Not many go from inside linebacker to edge mid or late in their career, let alone succeed in that transition at this point in their career and completely revamp their career hierarchy with the swap. So pre-2023, he was an inconsistent inside linebacker who would rush the pass around. Occasionally he'd get a handful of sacks. He was kind of the Levante David type, probably with a lower tackle floor, more inconsistent production, but then he got tagged with the defensive edge rusher role. And boom, he doubles his tackles and a career high 6 sacks in 2023. Then goes on to Minnesota and gets a new bag and grabs 11 sacks and 79 tackles, not to mention the interception returns for touchdowns. He's had 3 pick sixes in the last couple of years, so he's great in coverage too. I mentioned the 6 pass deflections, so there's more opportunity in IDP leagues for the pass deflection points, interception return yards. The guy's just really stuffing the stat sheet, and that's really what we like in IDP. He is a great value to get in your drafts because he's not going to cost as much as a top tier edge rusher, but he's got the ceiling to play that way. But again, like I said, with the kind of career or season he had last year, I think we can kind of bring our expectations down a little bit, but I think he's more than proven that he's got a solid enough floor to prove worthy of this ranking. So I love me some Andrew Van Ginkel. I love to pick him up as one of my top couple of defensive linemen late in these drafts. Often I'm in combined offense and defense leagues, so I'll just go ahead and load up on offense early, and then I will get guys like this, middle tier linebackers, older linebackers who just get a whole bunch of just collect tackles, and then guys like this who are sneaky on the defensive line that can really shore that up for me without spending high draft capital. So love me some Andrew Van Ginkel. Again, defensive end 16 for me in my rankings. Now let's get into some Nick Bonito. Nick Bonito's come on strong in the last couple of years. He comes in as my defensive end 17, the edge rusher for the Denver Broncos. Man, if you've been keeping up with the stats, he's been a fun player to have in IDP. He's made a splash in 2023 where he finally got an opportunity after a couple of years in the league and seized it in Denver, where he recorded 8 sacks and 3 multi-sack games that year that really got eyes looking. But overall, he was kind of up and down. He's not really all that fantasy reliable week in and week out. He had 4 to 5 games with a sack, but he was quiet the rest of the year that year. But by 2024, he was determined to show off his consistency. With 5 games, he actually flipped the script there and had 5 games without a sack as opposed to the 4 or 5 games the year before where he were the only games where he had a sack. So flipped the script there, and he also added more big plays to his bag where he recorded 2 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery, and an interception as well. That I think he took. Let's see. No, he took He took a fumble recovery. He took a fumble to the house, and actually even took an interception to the house. So again, more big play upside here. He also recorded 4 pass deflections in that time to go with his 13.5 sacks, 48 combined tackles, 33 of which were solo. Those are some good split rates we like to see there. Then he also had 16 tackles for loss, 24 quarterback hits. So again, I mean, if that doesn't say it for you, I don't know what will. Nick Bonito in this tier, he's one of those guys, much like Andrew Van Ginkel, who kind of has that upside and has flashed it more than just in a single season. So Bonito's beginning to find a groove in the NFL, and as part of one of the league's best pass rush defenses in Denver. And Sean Payton loves to bring pressure on the defensive line. I think they brought some of the most pressure, if not the most pressure of all defenses in the NFL last year. It was definitely top 5. So I think this kid's got more to him, but nonetheless, we're seeing him develop into a nice edge rusher. I just like to see him put up these numbers year over year. So it's kind of something that I just want to see consistently. I want to see more of it. I like what I've seen in the last couple of years, but I want to see him kind of develop that sort of consistency. You know, I don't like to bank on guys that just have a 1-year pop. If I can find a guy who's able to produce a year over year, those are guys I really like to target. So Nick Bonito's really proving to kind of find himself a floor here in IDP leagues. So edge 17 for me. Oh, now we show the big interior defensive lineman some love. And Dexter Lawrence, Giants defensive tackle, comes in as my DT1 on my rankings. And Dexter Lawrence was on to a historic season last year. He was on pace last season for a record year for defensive tackles before he got injured. He'd already notched a career high in sacks with 9 in just 12 games as an interior defensive lineman. That's nuts. So can you imagine if he would have played an entire year? We could have been looking at something like 12 to 15 sacks for a defensive tackle. That's nuts. And so now he gets more help on the defensive lineman as the Giants drafted Abdul Carter to add to the edge room, and he will rotate on the outside of the defensive line. So Dexter Lawrence's path to IDP production is wide open with this defense. They've really stacked the defense in all levels, and they have probably one of the more aggressive and proven not proven. They have one of the most aggressive and solid defensive lines overall, just throughout the entirety of it. So with Brian Burns, now you've got Kayvon Thibodeau, and you've got Abdul Carter on the outside. Nobody's going to be keeping an eye on Dexter Lawrence with all these big names on the outside. So he ought to continue to feast in fantasy, and is no question the top interior defensive lineman in fantasy football from me. So let's get into it. Let's get into some Abdul Carter. Abdul Carter, rookie edge rusher for the New York Giants, comes in at my defensive end 18. And he really popped in his junior year of college as he came away with 12 sacks and 24 tackles for loss. Those 24 tackles for loss were leading college football. So, combine in addition to those tackles for loss, that was part of a 68 tackle season. Again, reaches this floor of tackles we like to see for our defensive linemen. I know it was this college season. Again, I remind you that we need to temper expectations, because it's not too often edge rushers totally shine in year one. And especially with such a packed defensive lineman room, unless they move Kayvon Thibodeau, I don't see a huge path to immediate production. So temper expectations. If you can get him for maybe a cheaper rate mid-season or late in the season, when the owner who drafted him is kind of disappointed that they maybe spent a second-round pick on him and he's not getting production, go slip in and buy him later if you don't already have him. Otherwise, you can expect to hold on to him for a little bit. So, I'm no rookie expert, but a lot of analysts are high on him. I just think, again, we just want to temper expectations with defensive line, because this room's just pretty packed right now. There's not a clear path to immediate production. So, I think we're just going to have to wait a couple of years before we see exactly what Abdul Carter's ceiling is going to look like, but no less, he is a premier prospect, one of the highest we've seen in the last few years. Until we see it on the field in the NFL, I can't really get him much higher here personally until we see that show up in the box score on the field for IDP league. So he'll sit on my taxi until then. But Abdul Carter, keep an eye on him. He ought to be in a good position should he get the opportunity. Oh, next on our list here for Tier 4, we've got some Byron Young. He's 26 years old, the Rams edge rusher, played 16 games last year, had 1 pass deflection, 1 forced fumble, 7.5 sacks, 62 combined tackles, 34 of which were solo, 12 tackles for loss, 13 quarterback hits, and even got a safety last year. So Byron Young, he comes in as my defensive end 19. He's not one of these guys that's overly flashy. He doesn't have a huge ceiling. It's not all that high at all. But he's had a respectable floor of 60 tackles and about 7.5 sacks in his 2-year NFL career. So he won't go out and get multiple sacks in a game on the regular, but so his upside is limited. But in our defensive linemen at this point, in our rankings in Tier 4, we worry more about having a guy with a solid floor. And with the floor of Byron Young also comes a clean bill of health, too. He has yet to miss a game in the NFL. So, until we can see him kind of break through this ceiling that he's put on himself, I think he's going to remain in this tier until he can really tap into more of like a double-digit sack season, or possibly shift his tackle conversion to maybe get more solo tackles, or pad the stat sheet a little bit more with some more forced fumbles, pass deflections, things like that. Otherwise, he's pretty well a plain Jane. So he's going to remain kind of where he's at until he either drops his floor or raises his ceiling. So Byron Young, he's a steady Eddie. I think he's a guy that you can rely on should all these more higher ceiling guys in these tiers go in your draft. So I do like some Byron Young, and I think he's got more to his game, but there's there's a lot of mouths to feed there in LA, but there's a lot of potential there as well for more than what we've even seen already. So keep an eye on Byron Young. I don't think we've seen the end of him yet. So now we'll get into the bottom of this tier, and we've got some Laiatu Latu, year 2 edge rusher for the Indianapolis Colts. He's 24 years old. Last year, he only started in 1 game, but he played in all 17. He just played a very, very limited role. So last year he collected a pass deflection, 3 forced fumbles, a fumble recovery, 4 sacks, 32 combined tackles, 16 of which were solo, even split with assists. So he had 16 assists too. 5 tackles for loss and 12 quarterback hits. So Latu as a 50 to 60% of snaps kind of guy last year in year one. There's only so much we can go off of here, but he did show some flashes in the big play department with 3 forced fumbles in year one on a part-time schedule at his age. That shows promise. So I think he gets more run in year two, and this defensive line is a great one to learn from too, with DeForest Buckner and Kwity Paye. Some good vets there that he can really take notes from and craft his game around, because they've been a historically very productive defensive line overall. So he's in a good position, and I think he gets more run this year. They're kind of thinning out the defensive line a little bit, so I think with some more run, I think Latu can add to this big play factor that we kind of saw him flash with the splash plays last year. So I think we can expect more run from the 15th overall pick from a year ago. Latu has more to offer, and I think he gets it this year. So before we jump into any kind of other tiers, let me just add a little background. We did on that earlier. Down a little bit. But I do want to tell you guys a little bit about partnership we have going with Fast Draft. In case you haven't heard of Fast Draft, it is a best ball style kind of drafting fantasy app where it's small, quick, everything happens very quickly. So you definitely want to be prepared when you're coming in to sign up for this, but use code +X when you sign up, and we'll match you up to $50 on your first deposit. You deposit $20, you get $20. You deposit $50, you get $50. Up to $50, they will match you with code +X. So go ahead and sign up. Get in there, set your rankings, take a look. There's all kinds of drafts you can get into. Specifically, right now, I'm going to advocate for the D-Up draft. It's been a lot of fun, and there's a lot of factors that go into this. You draft 6 players for your team. The top 4 get into your lineup each week, and you're really just drafting all the big-name guys. So it's really fun, especially for you new players to IDP. Get in there, draft, get familiar with how the drafts fall and where players are valued at. There's a lot of good value in there and potential to make $2,000 if you win first in this tournament. So the places on the tournament for Fast Draft pay out to like 250th place. So get in there, throw your name in the hat, draft some players, get that deposit match, get in a few drafts, throw your name in the hat. You got potential to win some cash. And if you go back and you watch some videos, I put out some videos of some drafting advice with Fast Draft. If you have questions, reach out, comment, whatever you need. I can help you craft and shape your rankings to fit an optimal lineup for this Fast Draft tournament. So again, use code +X and get a deposit match up to $50 with your first deposit, and start drafting faster today. Now, when I say faster, these drafts take like 10 minutes tops. So stay on top of it. 20 seconds a pick, 6 players, and you're done. And if you're not interested in that, but you like what you see in terms of content on the IDP Plus YouTube, go check out the website and consider a subscription to the website. We've got all kinds of good stuff over there. We've got rankings, articles coming out every week. We've got links to our YouTube videos. We've got all kinds of tools with data and stats, snap counts. I mean, there's anything you could want. Go check out idpplus.com. I hope you will consider a subscription. I think right now they're at a decent price, so consider a monthly subscription. Check us out. Get into the Discord. Get a subscription. Get into the Discord. There are guys in there ready to lend opinions 24/7. So there's a lot of good perks with IDP Plus. Go check out the website. Consider a sign up, a subscription, and just see what we have to offer. I think you're going to be happy with what we put out this year. So go check it out. Now, before we get into our Tier 5, I also want to throw out a little bit about the Fantasy Football Expo, because it's coming up. It'll be here before we know it. Get your 2025 Fantasy Football Expo tickets at thefantasyfootballexpo.com. It's this August. August 8th through the 10th in Canton, Ohio, and check out the new fan packages, and you can join us as well as other well-known content creators at the NFL Hall of Fame in Village. So get your Fantasy Football Expo tickets today at thefantasyfootballexpo.com. Who's ready for some Tier 5? Let's get into some Tier 5. We've got Kobe Turner topping this tier at defensive tackle 2 for the LA Rams. Then we come down to Alex Highsmith, defensive end 21 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Jeff Simmons, defensive tackle 3 for the Tennessee Titans. Dallas Turner, defensive end 22 for the Vikings. Jonathan Cooper, defensive end 23 for the Denver Broncos. And Zach Sealer, defensive tackle 4 for the Miami Dolphins. So let's start it off here. In Tier 2, we see a lot of defensive tackles. The interior defensive line really starts flowing in my rankings for me in this tier. So to start off, we've got some Kobe Turner, defensive tackle 2, interior defensive lineman for the LA Rams. He's pretty well in the same breath as kind of your Byron Youngs, like I mentioned earlier. Nothing overly flashy, but for an interior defensive line, it kind of brings his value up a little bit. So that's even better for defensive tackle. So, and he's also got, like I mentioned with Byron Young, he also has that 60-ish tackle floor and an 8 to 9 sack floor as well that he's developed in 2 years of play. So he's a premier interior defensive lineman. And in 2024, last year, we saw him. He ended the year 4th in stops with 40, 7th in sacks with 8, 2nd in hurries with 43, and 7th in pressure among defensive tackles with 54. So Kobe Turner has done pretty dang well in his first couple of years in the NFL. In 16 games last year, again, I mentioned he came away with 8 sacks, 35 combined tackles, 10 for a loss, and 13 quarterback hits. He's getting it done. The floor I was talking about, and with interior defensive linemen and pressure stats, like I mentioned earlier, gives him even more upside as a defensive tackle. So should you have a defensive tackle premium league or a league that breaks out defensive tackles among the defensive line, I think Kobe Turner should be among the top tier defensive tackles in your league and should be drafted as such. So should we see him convert on more of those big plays that we saw him rank 2nd in hurries, 43 hurries and 54 pressures? Should he convert on more of those? I think he could be something really special. He's only been in the league a couple of years, so I think we've got more to see from Kobe Turner. So I just want to see him break that ceiling in IDP production to be able to help him jump a tier and maybe sniff a little bit of Dexter Lawrence's kind of ranking. So, but nonetheless, he's given us a solid floor right now. We just want to see a little bit more upside before we can bump him up. So there's little on Kobe Turner. Let's get into some Alex Highsmith, defensive end for the Pittsburgh Steelers opposite TJ Watts, my defensive end 21. He is the epitome of a best ball edge in IDP. He's up and down as all get out, but he always ends up getting things done at the end of the season. Last year, in 2024, he played just 11 games, but he came away with 6 sacks, 46 combined tackles, and 9 tackles for loss, and I think 12 or 13 quarterback hits. So he had a respectable season, even though it was a partial season. But again, like I mentioned, he always ends up to finish respectably placed among his peers at the end of the season. But it's very up and down. If it's not a pain to get there, you really can't rely on him. And so that's why I say he's a best ball target, because if you have to set your lineup every week, it is a nightmare to bank on any game that Alex Highsmith is going to have a good game in. So one game he'll go completely off for multiple sacks, and then he'll disappear for a string of weeks. So not the kind of player I'm into, but simply because of his year-over-year consistency and where he ends up finishing, that's why he's in this tier. So and then also the fact that he's got the potential upside for those multiple sack games. So especially if TJ Watt goes down, I think Alex Highsmith could have a huge year. But if he doesn't, we're going to kind of see this up and down from him as we normally have. So he's an acquired taste, and he's not really my taste. So now we're going to get into a little Jeffrey Simmons, defensive tackle for the Tennessee Titans in 2024. He played 16 games, came away with 4 pass deflections, 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, 5 sacks, 76 combined tackles, 11 for a loss, and 9 quarterback hits. Jeffrey Simmons is a longtime interior defensive lineman for the Titans. His 5 tackle floor is plenty for a defensive tackle in IDP. Excuse me. The tackle floor in his career, though, hasn't been all that great. He's had about a 50-ish tackle floor. So this year we saw him kind of bring that up quite a bit. So I don't know that we can entirely rely on the tackling floor. But if he can remain consistent and carry the 76 over, he could even take a little regression and still be effective. So nonetheless, last year he topped the league in solo tackles with 50. And, whenever you have splits kind of like that where you're getting primarily solo tackles, this can almost offset the lack of tackles historically that he's had, where he doesn't quite reach that 60 tackle floor we like to see. If he's getting good splits and more solo tackles, that is something we like to see. So, sometimes there's exceptions to guys who don't quite have the overall tackle floor at a glance. But he still shows us he's got more in the tank. And he also consistently puts up numbers in the pass deflection column, forced fumbles, fumble recoveries each year as he sprinkles them in throughout the year. His upside remains okay, but his year-over-year consistency is what keeps him in a tier like this. So, enough on Jeff Simmons. Let's get into a little second-year player talk. We've got some Dallas Turner, defensive end 22 for the Minnesota Vikings. He's 21 years old, and last season in 16 games where he played on a limited role, he had an interception, he had a pass which resulted in a pass deflection, 3 sacks, 20 combined tackles, 3 of which were for a loss, and 5 quarterback hits. So a little on Dallas Turner. He's just kind of part of a stacked edge room with Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard. So he's not got much run yet, but at 22, with the flashes he's shown on the sub 30% of snaps he's gotten, is really promising. So 3 sacks last year to go with an interception is pretty impressive for a rookie edge rusher. So he's earned himself more playing time, I think, in year 2, but expectations should be tempered. Edge rushers take a little bit of time to develop. So I think the age and prospect talent and first-round capital are what drive his price and keep him in this tier. So I think there's better years ahead for Dallas Turner, especially when AVG or Jonathan Grenard leave. Then it's game on for Dallas Turner and wheels up. But until then, he's going to kind of remain in this middling tier just due to the age here and overall draft capital. So enough on Dallas Turner. Let's get into some Jonathan Cooper. Jonathan Cooper is my defensive end 23 for the Denver Broncos. He comes in at 26 years old. He played 17 games last year, came in with a pass deflection, forced fumble, 10.5 sacks, 58 combined tackles, 11 of which were for a loss, and 20 quarterback hits. Jonathan Cooper is another quiet performer that makes the rankings here. And since jumping to a full-time role a couple of years ago, we now have some great starts to go on. So 8.5 sack floor, roughly 60 tackle floor as well. He's one to also sprinkle in some forced fumbles and fumble recoveries for big play upside. PFF had him at 13 sacks last year, so maybe he's in on more big plays than we realized, with sleeper stats showing only 10.5. I think we can expect him to remain a vital part of this defense here. And again, with how Sean Payton loves to bring pressure, I think Cooper is making a nice career for himself. So even post-Denver, I think he can find a role elsewhere and earn another contract. So another year of this kind of production, I think he could continue to climb and even maybe jump into the tier above. So let's get into the bottom of this tier. We've got Zach Sealer, 29-year-old defensive tackle for Miami. Comes into my defensive tackle 4. Last year he played 15 games, recorded an interception, 2 pass deflections, a forced fumble, a fumble recovery, 10.5 sacks, and 55 combined tackles, 13 of which were for a loss, and 19 quarterback hits. So Zach Sealer has kind of fallen to the wayside in terms of IDP, as it seems. Overall, he doesn't get drafted very high, but he always produces in terms of his overall career. He was kind of up and down there for a little bit, but he's got a nice floor as of the last couple of years. So he's had two straight years of double-digit sack seasons, and a very nice 60 tackle floor. So he's outstanding, which is outstanding for a defensive tackle. So we love to see those kinds of floors and production that we can kind of rely on. He's an old, reliable defensive tackle for your defensive tackle leagues. And Steelers getting up there in age, but he only missed 2 games in the last 5 years. So he ought to be there. Availability is the best ability. So I just wish that this guy gets some healthy players around him on the defensive line so that he can kind of thrive a little bit more and be less of the focus of opposing offensive lines. So he's going to kind of be stuck where he's at unless he can break through that ceiling. But should he get a better supporting cast and more production in that aspect, I think he puts up stats either way. So he's someone we can rely on as a defensive tackle. Let's get into defensive line, tier 6, and we'll wrap things up here. To start us off, let's see. We've got some DeForest Buckner. He's a little old, comes in at 31 now. But last year, as the defensive tackle for the Indianapolis Colts, my defensive tackle 5, he played 12 games, started 11 of them, and recorded 6.5 sacks, 61 combined tackles, 24 of which were solo, 8 for loss, and 14 quarterback hits in a partial season. DeForest Buckner is an old man, but he's good at producing. My gosh, is he consistent as all get out, and you can set him and forget him. Even in this tier, just don't even worry about it. So he's got top tier production year over year. He should be ranked higher, but his days are numbered. So I love him for a cheaper defensive lineman piece that you can set and forget until he's out of the league. So a little on DeForest Buckner there. Now we get into some Tui Tuipulotu. Edge rusher for the LA Chargers, comes in at my defensive end 24. Last year he was in his second season in the NFL. He played 17 games, started 9 of them, came away with 2 pass deflections, 1 forced fumble, 8.5 sacks, 42 combined tackles, 11 of which were solo, and 17 quarterback hits. Tui Tuipulotu comes into an opportunity where Joey Bosa has left in the offseason, so he's going to step into a massive role for a revamped team under a new coaching staff as of last year. He showed some great upside in small sample size last year on limited snaps. He had 3 multiple sack games on 60-70% of snaps, roughly on average. And so I think this team will continue to be competitive, and with more of a role, he ought to smash through his ceiling that he displayed for us last year. Now we get into some Montez Sweat, edge rusher for the Chicago Bears, comes in at my defensive end 25. Last year, in 16 games, he had a down year, came in with 2 pass deflections, 2 forced fumbles, 5.5 sacks, 32 combined tackles, 9 were for a loss, and 12 quarterback hits. Montez Sweat has historically been a pretty reliable edge in overall finishes, but he took a dip last year after a career low in 2024. He took a back seat in snaps, so he just played part-time. But you got to figure this year that he's going to get more run as he's the most experienced vet on this defensive line. So that considered with the personnel changes and expected jump of the Bears this season, I think we can expect more from Montez Sweat. So there's more to come. I just really hate to see the dip in production at this point in his career, especially when he was healthy. Now we get into a little Quinnen Williams, defensive tackle for the New York Jets. Last year, in 16 games, he came away with 6 sacks, 37 combined tackles, 8 of which were for a loss, 18 quarterback hits. And Quinnen Williams, as defensive tackle 6 for my rankings, is probably ranked a lot higher in consensus rankings elsewhere. But with such high expectations and inconsistent overall production year over year, I just can't seem to get him higher than this personally. But he's developed a decent enough floor with 50 to 60 tackles. But no more sacks than he usually gets. They're often concentrated in a few select games where he'll get a sack and a half or a couple sacks in a game, and then he'll just kind of coast on mediocre tackling production the rest of the year. So not a guy he's a guy that we thought would have a huge ceiling, but hasn't really displayed much of one. He had a 12.5 sack season a couple years ago, but hasn't really shown much of those flashes since. So I just want to see more consistency in his big play game or a jump in his tackling production or something to make up for the fluctuation in performance. But he's still got a stable enough floor either way, and I just want to see the production match the hype on some level here. 1 year of that 12.5 sack production is not going to cut it. So maybe this is a product of his environment where historically a great Jets defense rotates and there's not enough pie to go around. I'm not sure. So maybe Quinnen can climb up the ranks this year, but for me, this is where he'll reside. Let's get into some Kayvon Thibodeaux, my defensive end 26, edge rusher for the New York Giants. Last season, he played 12 games, recorded 2 pass deflections, 1 forced fumble, 5.5 sacks, 28 combined tackles, 8 for a loss, and 17 quarterback hits. So, Kayvon Thibodeaux, he's shown some promise, but injuries often get him, and the boom or bust play can be frustrating. So that's why he's kind of down here, but he's got the potential to make the jump should he be able to play a full year and live up to his draft capital and the potential we've seen. He's kind of like Highsmith in that he's more of a best ball guy and he shows promise, but we really need him to log a full season to see if he can put up those numbers from those 2023 numbers again. But I feel this is a respectable spot for him considering the big play upside he's shown. He just got a very brittle floor where he can kind of fall off for a little bit. So I think that it's just as likely that he falls down this list as it is that he climbs up the ranks. So keep an eye on Kayvon. He's got the upside, and should he log a full season, I think we'll see good things from him. Oh, let's talk a little George Karlaftis. George Karlaftis is the defensive end for the Kansas City Chiefs. Come in as my defensive end 27. And last year, in 16 games, he recorded 5 pass deflections, 8 sacks, 35 combined tackles, 9 of which were for a loss, and 28 quarterback hits. So George Karlaftis is just one of those guys that is always there. He's never missed a game in the NFL in 3 years, and he has no fewer than 6 sacks in a season. So he's a guy that's developed a pretty solid floor already in the NFL, but he's not really overly flashy. He's never really going to have big upside, but he's going to get the job done for you. And then considering he's part of the defensive line with Chris Jones means that Chris Jones' presence kind of takes away from the attention of George Karlaftis. So he's not really the primary threat for opposing offensive lines. Again, he's nothing fancy, nothing flashy, but he's a guy who brings his lunch pail to work and gets it done and goes home. He's a sack or bust guy, but he spreads those sacks out for consistency. He's not going to go get 2 or 3 sacks in a game, but he'll spread them out and get you a sack every other week-ish or so. But he's got some upside. He can get you multiple sack games. It just doesn't come very often. So there's a little on some Furious George. Oh, man. Carl Granderson, the defensive end 28 edge rusher for the New Orleans Saints. Carl Granderson is just one of these guys that does not miss time. He is always available and rarely misses any games. But he's a little shallow in the sack department from what we like to see in our edge rushers, where he really kind of maxes out at like 8 or 8.5 sacks. But he gets a 60 tackle floor, which is what we do like to see from our defensive linemen. So, not to mention his solo splits are great too. He was 5th at among defensive ends at the position in solo tackles in 2024. So he's getting in the backfield as well. We just want to see him convert more of his 46 hurries and 61 pressures into actual sack production and box score stats that we can rely on for IDP. So, but last year, because he didn't quite convert as many, he took a dip in value and we saw some regression. But nonetheless, 3 years of production where we've seen 50 or more tackles and 5.5 or more sacks is great for year-over-year consistency, especially at this point in the rankings. So Carl Granderson is just another guy you can count on to be there and give your team a seasonal floor at defensive line or edge, depending on your league. So I just want to see these conversions kind of go up a little bit. He was among the top in the league in his hurries and pressure categories, so I want to see him convert those into sacks and actual quarterback hits so we can get points in fantasy. Oh, now we talk a little bit about some Kwity Paye as we look to round out tier 6. Kwity Paye is my defensive end 29 edge rusher for the Indianapolis Colts. I can't seem to personally quit some Kwity Paye, as as strange as that sounds. But that's mainly because his upside is so great. The dude just gets injured and is surrounded by studs, but he puts up the kind of numbers that we love to see. I just wish that he could stay healthy and get more run, as he's kind of always been stuck in a rotational role where he doesn't get much more than like 60% of snaps, but he still puts up solid year-over-year numbers. 6 or more sacks and 40 or more tackles on just over half the snaps is very promising for a defensive end on a part-time role. So that 6 sack, 40 tackles is his floor in his career over the last several years. So something that we like to see. I just hope that he can maybe collect a clean bill of health this season, get more run, be on the field more, and show us more of that upside just by being on the field. So I think with more time on the field and a healthy season, he could vault up at least in this tier. But I think before he jumps the tier, I'm going to have to see him do it for a couple of seasons just because he's often hurt. But again, the upside is there in Kwity Paye. Now, to wrap up DL tier 6, coming in at defensive end 30, edge rusher for the New York Jets, we've got Jermaine Johnson rounding out the ranks. He left us wanting more in 2023 after a 7.5 sack and 55 tackle season. He got injured last year in his 2024 season after that. So we're kind of left holding the bag after 2023. We thought we had something good and we were going to get something great in 2024. Got injured, bam. Now he's dropping down a little bit. So we're just kind of hanging on to the promise that he showed a couple of years ago in 2023, where he was getting the 7.5 sacks, 55 tackles on about 60 or 70% of snaps. That's very encouraging for an edge rusher. Some good production, and should he be able to carve out more of a role in this defense, I think we can expect to see these numbers jump up and that develop as more of maybe his floor. So, but then you also have to think about the Jets and that they historically kind of rotate their defensive linemen, so it may be it's kind of where he's at. It comes with a little bit of risk at this point where he might, if he continues to play a part-time role, the 7.5 sacks, 55 tackles might end up being his ceiling. We'll just kind of have to see how it plays out this year. But he's in a contract year, so if he wants to get paid, the dude better show out, or he's going to fall down these ranks. And if he doesn't come up with a second contract, he's probably going to be done in the NFL. But the upside is there. Should he get the opportunity and seize it, I think there's more from Jermaine Johnson. That's going to wrap up my second episode of the defensive lineman tiers. Thank you, everybody, for watching and sticking around. Keep an eye on the YouTube channel. We've got Sebastian putting out betting content for the UFL. Not to mention him and Derek are getting into some offensive rankings. They did tight ends last week. They just put out quarterbacks. I imagine they're doing running backs and wide receivers next. Keep an eye on the fantasy YouTube as well for Johnny put out his defensive back rankings last week. Me and him are working on linebackers for this next week. Ricky puts out his videos. We've got Joel doing best ball. We've got tons of stuff coming out. Keep an eye on the website as well for articles. If you remember from the email mailbag over the summer and last year, Michael Sicoli is jumping in and getting some articles out there. Keep an eye on the website for articles as well. So lots of good stuff. Keep an eye on the IDP Plus YouTube. Get into the website, get you a subscription, get into the Discord, and take advantage of all of the perks that we have to offer. We've got a lot. We're full steam ahead, and we've got a lot to offer and a lot coming ahead of this year. So stay tuned. Thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you back here next week for another episode of the IDP Plus podcast.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.